Cold wind rolled across the Wyoming plains, carrying winter's bite even though the calendar still insisted it was autumn. Mara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, the wool scratchy against her neck. She stood at the edge of her property, staring at the half-collapsed fence that seemed to droop like her spirit. Every board needed replacing, every hinge needed fixing, and every day felt like a race she was losing. Being widowed at 28 left her in a house built for two but echoing with one set of footsteps. After her husband passed the year before, neighbors offered casseroles for a month and condolences for 3. Then people simply fell silent around her. They waved from trucks but never stopped long, unsure what to say to a woman who'd lost too much too young. That morning, the crunch of gravel drew her attention. A pickup truck rolled to a careful stop at her gate. The engine quieted, and rancher Eli Carter stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, steady as the land itself. His face was weather-worn from years of sun, yet his eyes held a gentleness that surprised most who met him. He removed his hat like he always did around women, out of respect, not show. "Morning, Mara," he told her softly. She nodded, unsure why he'd come. Eli wasn't a man who visited without a purpose. He carried a box to her porch, set it down, then returned for another. Feed, boots for fence work, a new coil of rope, and canned goods she hadn't bought in months. "I don't need charity," she whispered, cheeks warming. Eli paused mid-step, not offended, not embarrassed. "Didn't say you did." His tone was simple, almost quiet enough to be mistaken as wind. Mara's breath fogged in front of her. She hadn't realized the temperature had dropped so sharply. Her hands were numb from holding the rope she'd been trying to knot, failing miserably. Eli watched a moment, then knelt beside the broken rail, measuring a section with the ease of someone raised by tools and wide-open sky. Silence stretched. Not the uncomfortable kind, just quiet. Rumor in town said Eli had tried to adopt children more than once. Some whispered the agency rejected him because a ranch was too rough for little ones. Others said he lived too far out, or worked too much, or simply didn't know how to modernize his world for kids who came from different places. No one exactly knew the truth, and Eli himself never explained. Mara studied him. He wasn't a man eager to take from others, he was the type to give quietly and disappear before anyone could thank him. She swallowed. "Why are you really here?" He lifted his head slightly, eyes meeting hers. "Your fence won't last through this season. Thought you might want help before snow shuts the road." Help. That word sat heavy in her chest, foreign and fragile. She opened her mouth to protest when he spoke again, voice low, almost like he was afraid of how it might sound aloud. "You want a home, and I need children." Mara froze, unsure she heard right. But Eli wasn't looking at her with anything improper, only steady honesty. "I've been trying to adopt," he continued. "Every door shuts in my face. Folks think a single rancher can't do it alone." He hesitated, then added, "Maybe they're right." A painful truth, spoken without bitterness. Mara's heart tightened. Not from offense, but from understanding. They were two people standing on different sides of loss, somehow level with each other anyway. The wind brushed her cheek, and for one strange moment, she felt something warm try to push up through the cold. Hope. Her lips trembled toward the shape of a smile she thought she no longer remembered how to make. It began with the kind of small things people hardly notice. A spare cup of coffee poured into a second mug. A plate set out with an extra fork. Breakfasts eaten on Eli's porch while sunlight crawled over the mountains. Mara would bring fresh bread. He'd fry eggs in an old cast iron skillet. neither saying they were sharing a table. They simply were. From there, the fence repairs turned into weekends spent working side by side. Eli showed her how to tie a new brace wire. She taught him her husband's trick for splitting wood without wasting the grain. They hardly spoke about the past. They didn't have to. Loss recognized loss without needing a translation. Some days, they would drive into town for supplies. That was when people started noticing how Mara stood closer to Eli, and how Eli seemed to look over his shoulder more, perhaps checking she was still there. Nothing was official, nothing defined, but folks talk when silence starts changing shape. Then one afternoon, a social worker arrived, someone Mara had never met but who greeted Eli like she'd visited before. Papers rustled on the porch table. Mara stood uncertainly at the door, not wanting to interrupt until the woman turned with a warm, surprisingly familiar smile. "Eli mentioned you in the update," she said gently. Mara's voice caught. "Update? About the adoption?" The social worker nodded. "We've been reviewing his case. And yours." "Mine." Mara's heart stumbled. She wasn't part of anyone's application. But apparently, Eli had spoken of her. Not romantically, but honestly. About how she understood land, and loss, and what building something new might require. After that, visits from the foster agency became more frequent. At first, the children came in small groups, a quiet boy with wide eyes, a shy girl who clung to a stuffed animal, a sibling pair who didn't speak the entire afternoon but later sent a hand-drawn picture of horses taped to the old barn door. Mara found herself saving those drawings in a wooden box under her bed. She never admitted it aloud, but Eli saw her tuck them away and only smiled. The seasons shifted. Snow gathered on fence posts. Ice lined the water trough. But warmth kept sneaking into the farmhouse. A chuckle during dinner, a child's forgotten mitten found by the door, little echoes where silence used to live. Then came the day the final papers arrived. The envelope was thick, official, stamped and signed. Mara held it with both hands, afraid the whole dream might still crumble like old timber. Eli stood nearby. Not pressing, not assuming, just waiting, breath caught somewhere he dared not release. Her fingers shook as she slid the papers free, eyes scanning the words. Approved. Placement confirmed. Guardianship assigned. Guardianship. Plural. Not just Eli. Them. Together. A tear slid down her cheek before she realized it had fallen. She turned toward him, something soft and steady blooming behind her ribs. "Looks like this house finally has a family." Eli let out a long, trembling breath, the kind a person only releases when they've been carrying it far too long. And the widow, at last, finally smiled.